Assalamu alaikum everyone. Walaikum assalam. Yep, I'm back. Walaikum assalam everyone. Sir, at how many significant figures are you supposed to leave your answer if not specified in the questions in the exam, suppose? Nahi, dekho, I have a different opinion when it comes to significant figures. So, all you have to do is read the question paper, okay? The question paper says that you should give your answer correct to 3 significant figures. Non-exact answers. So that's it. If an answer is not exact, that means you should give it correct to 3 significant figures. That's it. अच्छा, अब इसमें कुछ चीज़ें हैं. Before you get to the final answer, do not round off. Like for example, let's say you have to use an angle, you have to maybe use some length to get to the final answer. So that you're not supposed to round off. That you keep at least a minimum of 5 significant figures. But then when you get to the final answer, that is what you should round off correct to 3 significant figures. You must. It says on the question paper, those instructions are for you. I mean, the question paper also says do not use a calculator if it's paper 1, or the question paper also says you may write in dark blue या black pen, something like that. So वो instructions आप लोगों के लिए हैं. ठीक है? Sir, for AS, how determine that do we write plus minus when calculating inverse of a function? I have a video on it. Okay, I have a video on it. And yes, tomorrow permutations part 2, don't worry about it. Kal permutation part 2 bilkul ho raha hai. So I have a video on it. How do we decide whether to write plus or minus? Will there be a transformation stream for Math D? I have an entire playlist for transformation. I don't think I'm going to be doing a stream. Maybe I will. I don't know. But yes, tomorrow, inshallah, I'm streaming permutations. Sir, March में mocks हैं, आप please regular हो जाएं. तो बेटा regular हो तो क्या? For me, this is quite regular. You know, for the past 2 weeks, I've been doing 2 streams in a week. So for me, this is quite regular. Same time, 8:30. 8:30 p.m. is the standard stream time these days. Anyway, so let's start. Kya khayal hai? Binomial theorem is something that we can start from scratch, and we can also cover it through and through. So let's make the most of the time that we have. Just a minute. Let me open up my notes so I don't forget anything. Just a second. Left. Right. Sir, please do a stream on circular measure. Circular measure? Acha, circular measure is, I think, one of the easier topics. So not a lot of people have requested, but chalo, let's see. I'm going to prioritize the difficult topic first. Okay. So let's start binomial theorem. Now, first of all, this topic, by the way, comes under series. Like for example, if you go through the syllabus, you will notice that in the syllabus there's series. There's no binomial theorem, there's no APGP. So under series, you have binomial theorem and APGP. So make a note of this, that under series, you have binomial. You have one chapter which is binomial theorem, जिसको हम binomial expansion भी बोलते हैं. And you have another topic which is series. So these are the 2 topics that you have under, APGP. Just like you won't find linear law as a separate topic in the syllabus because it's part of coordinate geometry of a straight line. Okay? So, remember, keep this in mind. Now, before I start, let's go over the word binomial. It's very important. You know, we learned the entire topic, but we don't really pay attention to what exactly it means. So, bi basically कहते हैं 2 को. Okay, let's say, you know how we say bipolar. So bi basically means 2. Okay, nomial means terms. It's basically terms in the language Latin. जैसे हम बोलते हैं ना polynomial. So that's what the word nomial means. So binomial expansion means that you are expanding 2 terms that have a certain power with a plus or minus in between. Okay. So that's what binomial is basically all about. If you've done this topic before, you would know that in this topic, you know, you do stuff like 1 plus 2x to the power 5, you want to 1 plus 5x to the power 8, and sometimes you expand all the way, as in you get all the terms, sometimes you expand for very specific number of terms. Now, some patterns that are worth paying attention to are these. So if, for example, you have 1 plus x raised to the power of 1. Now, this is not something that requires to be expanded. The expansion of 1 plus x power 1 will be 1 power x. So there's nothing to expand over here. What is worth paying attention to is that you have a total of 2 terms. Okay, how many terms do we have over here? We have a total of 2 terms. अच्छा देखो बेटा, जो लोग वीडियोस रिक्वेस्ट करें ना, मैं अपने इंस्टाग्राम पे हमेशा डालता हूँ कि व्हाट टॉपिक शुड आई डू अ स्ट्रीम ऑन. The topic that is the most in demand is the topic I do a stream on. Okay, so I would request you guys to give your input there so that I can, stream accordingly. Anyway, now let's say you have 1 plus x the whole thing square. So the expansion of this will be 1 plus 2x plus x square, and notice the number of terms that we have. That's 3 number of terms. If let's say you have 1 plus x the whole thing cubed. Now if you expand this, it's going to be 1 plus 3x plus 3x square plus x cube. Notice that the number of terms that we have over here is 4. Similarly, if you carry on and if you expand 1 plus x the whole thing power 4, now it doesn't matter what the expansion is. And by the way, you may be able to expand 1 plus x the whole thing power 4, maybe by using the expansion of 1 plus x the whole thing square and 1 plus x the whole thing square. You will be able to expand and you'll realize that the total number of terms are 5. But if let's say I ask you to expand 1 plus x the whole thing power 9, then you'll probably give up. Okay, if you don't know binomial theorem, if you don't know the formula, you'll probably give up. You'll be like, this is practically impossible to figure out. And this is basically where binomial theorem comes in. This is where binomial theorem comes in. Like for example, if let's say you're solving a quadratic equation and we know that there's middle term breaking, but there will come a point where you can't do middle term breaking. So if someone who doesn't know the quadratic formula will probably give up and say it's not solvable. So just like that, binomial is you can't expand expressions like these if you don't know binomial theorem. Now I'm going to write down the formula. For those of you who are looking at the formula for the first time, will probably freak out, but nothing to worry about. We'll come to terms with the formula very soon. So if let's say you have a plus b the whole thing to the power of n, and this is what you're supposed to expand. So the formula looks like this: NCR, a raised to the power n minus r, and b to the power of r. A raised to the power n minus r, b raised to the power of r. R is something that starts with 0, and then 1, and then 2, and then 3, and then all the way to n, depending on what the power is. Okay? Now, let's do a few examples to understand how the formula works. You will be given this formula, but as I always say that if you have to look at the formula, that means you haven't done enough practice. Suggest me what should I do? I've gotten C. But instead of asking people what you should do, I think the answer is quite clear. Just solve past papers. I mean, identify why you've gotten a C. Don't just look at your grade. See where you've lost marks. So 10 लोगों से पूछोगे 10 अलग बातें सुनने को मिलेंगी. It's best you identify your weaknesses and work on your weaknesses. That's it. Can binomial theorem come in non-calculator paper? Yeah, that's a good question. It can. I think it can. And there is a way to figure out NCR without a calculator. We're going to do that most likely in today's class, inshallah. So let's say that you're given 1 plus x the whole thing power 5. Okay? And this is what you're supposed to expand. Now remember, before you expand, remember the rule that the total number of terms will be equal to n plus 1. So that means in this case, the total number of terms that you will have will be equal to 6. So let's identify what's a, what's b, and what is n. So if I compare this with a plus b to the power of n, we can see that a is equals to 1, we can see that b is equals to x, and we can see that n is equals to 5. So this is how I use the formula. You might have done it some other way, you might have done it horizontally, but I prefer writing the terms vertically. It's much more neater that way. Now you don't have to do it that way if you don't like it, but it's best that you do it that way. So r equals to 0. So we'll start with r equals to 0. That means in this formula, I will plug in 0 in place of r. So we know what n is, we know what a is, we know what b is. N की जगह हम क्या करेंगे? N की जगह we're going to plug in 5, and in place of r, we're going to plug in 0. So that's 5c0, a, which is 1, raised to the power 5 minus 0, which is 5, and x raised to the power of 0. Okay? चलें कर लिया आपके लिए मैंने थोड़ा माइक क्लोज, बल्कि थोड़ी आवाज़ भी बढ़ा देता हूँ. चलें. Happy? Now, next is r equals to 1. So for that, it's going to be 5c1, 1 raised to the power of 5, x raised to the power of 1. So remember, the power on a is always n minus r, and the power on b is always the value of r. Then r will be equal to 2. So when r is 2, it's going to be 5c2, 1 raised to the power of 3, x raised to the power of 2, and then r equals to 3. That's going to be 5c3, 1 raised to the power of 5 minus 3, which is 2, x raised to the power of 3. You can pick up a pattern, and the pattern is that the value on 1 is gradually decreasing, the value on x, the second term, is gradually increasing. Then when r is equals to 5, finally we have 5c5, 1 raised to the power of 5 minus 5, which is 0, x raised to the power of 5. Okay? Now work out these terms, figure out 5c0 using your calculator. So you'll notice that's 1, 1 power 5 is also 1, x power 0 is also 1. So that means the first term is just equal to 1. Now what we can do is we can completely ignore this column. Okay, we can completely ignore this column, and the reason why we can do that is because it's just 1. So 1 raised to whatever power will always be 1. Now 5c1 is 5, x power 1 is x, 5c2 is 10, x power 2 is x squared, 5c3 is also 10, and then we have x cubed, 5c4 is 5, so that's going to be 5x power 4, and then 5c5 is 1, so it's going to be x power 5. In the end, don't forget to write your answer nicely, which is 1 plus x power 5, the expansion of which is equal to 1 plus 5x plus 10x squared plus 10x cubed plus 5x power 4 plus x power 5. That's the answer. Okay, so very simple example, and let's do another one. Beta, this is very similar to what we have in A-level math, but I would suggest कि आप title पढ़ लें stream का, तो आपको पता चल जाएगा. Please make a habit of reading the title and reading the instructions, so you don't have to ask these questions. Now, 1 minus 2x raised to the power of 7, this is what we're expanding, but we're not going to expand it all the way through. Sometimes the question will say up to the term in x power 4 in ascending powers of x. Okay? So we have to expand this up to the term in x cubed in ascending powers of x. Now don't worry about ascending powers of x. When we start r from 0, it is naturally in ascending powers of x. Okay? So here we are. Now, let's start with r equals to 0. So r equals to 0, that means 7c0, 1 raised to the power 7, minus 2x raised to the power of 0. Then r equals to 1, which means 7c1, 1 raised to the power 7 minus 1, which is equal to 6, minus 2x raised to the power of 1. AS level? I don't think the title of the previous stream was AS level. I don't think so. If it was, then it's wrong. But I don't think it was. I think it was AdMaths. Okay. 7c2, 1 raised to the power 5 minus 2x raised to the power of 2. Was it AS level? Can anyone please confirm? Then r equals to 3. That would be 7c3, 1 raised to the power 7 minus 3, which is 4, minus 2x raised to the power of 3. And then r equals to 4, which means 7c4, 1 raised to the power of 7 minus 4, which is 3, and minus 2x raised to the power of 4. Okay, now why do we stop here? We stop here because when we expand this, we can see that the power on x is 4, which means we will achieve our desired outcome, which is we will get x power 4, and that's it. Now, let's expand this. Let's see what do we get. So we get 1 into 1 into 1, that's our first term. So remember a rule that if a is 1, then the first term will always be equal to 1. Then 7c1 is 7, 1 power 6 is 6, and then minus 2x, so that's equal to minus 14x. Then I'm just going to write down the answer. So it's going to be 84x square, then minus 280x cube, then finally 560 x power 4. Now remember a rule that whenever you're expanding with minus sign in between, in that case you will have signs alternating. What do I mean by alternating signs? In that case you will have plus and then minus and then plus and then minus. Okay, so you can make a note of it if you like, that if you are expanding with a minus sign then the signs will be alternating. अच्छा मैंने अभी चेक किया उसमें A level या AS level तो बेटा ऐसा कहीं नहीं रखा हुआ, so I don't know what you're reading, but anyway, खैर. So let's write this nicely. So we have 1 minus 14x plus 84x square minus 280x cube plus 560 x power 4. Okay, and make a note that when, here is an important note, and that is when expanding a minus b to the power of n, signs will be alternating starting with positive. Okay. Now, let's do another example. In fact, now let's do some past paper questions. All right, let's do some past paper questions, and with some past paper questions, we are going to understand some important concepts. Just a minute, I've taken out a few past paper questions, and okay, here. Find the first three terms in the expansion of 1 plus 3x to the power of 6. Okay, so here are some example questions, and this is basically from past papers. And remember, we're still doing the first concept, and this first concept revolves around simple expansion. Yeah, we will do that also. We'll do that. So what do you mean by independent of x? Independent of x, yeah, basically means a constant. Okay, where x power is 0. So we're going to do that. Don't worry about it. Find the first three terms in the expansion of 1 plus 3x, the whole thing, power 6. So it's just a 2-mark question. And remember, you want just the first three terms. So please don't bother expanding the entire thing. So that's going to be 6c0, 1 raised to the power of 6, 3x raised to the power of 0. Then it's going to be 6c1, 1 raised to the power of 5, 3x to the power of 1. Then it's going to be 6c2, 1 raised to the power of 4, 3x raised to the power of 2. That's it. Now let's work this out, see what do we get. So this is going to be 1. This is going to be 18x. 6c2 is 15. 15 into 9, that's 135. 135 x squared. Let's write this nicely. So this is 1 plus 18x plus 135 x squared. Now, next part. Part 2 says, hence find the coefficient of x squared in the expansion of 1 plus 3x, the whole thing power 6, into 1 minus 3x minus 5x squared. Ab dekho, don't waste your time trying to look for a formula for everything. In some areas, you have to just use your common sense. So notice that the question made us expand 1 minus 3x to a certain power, and that power was x squared. And why is that? That's because we have all the relevant terms that will multiply and give us x squared. Okay, so अगर हम इनको multiply करें तो हम देख सकते हैं कि we have all the relevant terms which will multiply and give us x squared. I froze. Yes, my camera just died. Just a minute. Let me fix that. Just a second. Just a minute. Fixing it. एक minute. Okay, so we're back online. Now, as I was saying, that we have all the relevant terms that we need in order to multiply and get the coefficient of x squared. Now the question is, should we multiply all the terms? No. Don't waste your time trying to multiply all the terms. That's not necessary. We're only going to multiply the terms that will give us x squared. So 1 is a constant. What should I multiply 1 with? I should multiply 1 with minus 5. So that will give me minus 5x squared. Keep your eyes on the prize. We want the coefficient of x squared. Now, what about 18x? Should I multiply 18x with 1? Nope, that's going to be a total waste of time. I need to multiply 18x with whatever term that's going to give me x squared. And the answer is, I should multiply 18 with minus 3. 18x with minus 3x. So that's going to give me minus, first of all, and what's 18 into minus 3? Let's work this out. 18 into minus 3 is minus 54x squared. Then what about 135x squared? 135x squared already has x squared, so that means multiplying it by 1 will be enough. So I'm going to multiply it by 1, and that gives me x squared as well. Okay, so don't waste your time trying to multiply all the terms. Just multiply all the relevant terms, and that's it. Now let's work this out. Minus 5 minus 54 plus 135. What do we get? We get 76x squared. And the final answer will be 76 only. Why? Because the question was asking you just for the coefficient of x squared. Nothing more and nothing less. Sir, if we fully expanded, wouldn't we have gotten other x squared? Nope. Dekho, hamesha terms x ki powers will always increase. So if you had expanded further, you would have gotten x cubed, you would have gotten x power 4, you would have gotten x power 6, and then finally x power 6. So no other term would multiply and give you x power 2. Okay, let's do another example. So here we have another past paper question, and I'm only going to solve the first two parts. इस part को हम बाद में देखेंगे अभी थोड़ी देर में. Write down the first 4 terms in ascending powers of x in the expansion of 1 minus 3x, the whole thing power 7. Yes, this is a small topic. We'll be able to cover it, inshallah, today only. So first 4 terms, that means we start with r equals to 0. So that's going to be 7c0, 1 raised to the power 7, minus 3x raised to the power of 0. Then r equals to 1, which means 7c1, 1 raised to the power of 6, minus 3x to the power of 1. So that's 2 terms. Here's the third term, which means 7c2, 1 raised to the power of 5, minus 3x raised to the power of 2. And then finally, r equals to 3, that's the fourth term. So that's 7c3, 1 raised to the power of 4, minus 3x raised to the power of 3. Okay, so the first term, that's got to be 1. The second term will be minus 21x. Then 7c2 is 7, 6 or 21, 21 into 9. So minus 189 x squared, and then positive, okay, I better work this out using a calculator, 7c3 into 27. So this will be, acha ye plus hoga, ye minus hoga, minus 945 x cubed. Yes, I would say functions is definitely the hardest. Functions and trigonometry are pretty much in the same league of difficulty. So here's the answer to the first part. You get 3 easy marks, and that's it. Now let's do part 2. So part 2 says, let's see what part 2 says. Part 2 says, find the coefficient of x cubed in the expansion of 5 plus 2x and 1 minus 3x to the power of 7. So 5 plus 2x को किस से multiply करें so that we get x cubed. Notice that the question has already made us expand to a certain degree. That means अगर इससे कोई बड़ी power of x तक हम expand करते हैं, so that would have been irrelevant, because that would have given us x power 4, and x power 4 cannot be multiplied by any term in this bracket to give us x cubed. Okay, so we have 5. What should I multiply 5 with? 5 is a constant, so it better be multiplied with the coefficient of x cubed, or the term with x cubed in it. So 5 into minus 945. So 5 into 945, that's minus 4,725 x cubed. Now what about 2x? 2x must be multiplied by positive 189. So 2 into 189, that's equal to 378 x cube. Keep your eyes on the prize. We want the coefficient of x cube. So minus 4725 plus 378, that's equal to minus 4347 x cube, but we're not going to write x cube because we just want the coefficient. And there you go, fellas, that's the answer. Yes, Casio, it is allowed. I mean, what do you mean basic mathematics exam? Mathematica to एक ही exam होता है ना. Basic से क्या मुराद है? Please explain. All right. So now let's level up and increase the difficulty level of. Actually, let's learn a new concept. इसका जो नया concept है, which is finding the coefficient of x power n. So there are three scenarios. Yes, it is allowed, beta. It is allowed. Finding the coefficient of x power n, and there are three possibilities. First possibility is when x is in the second term. This is the most common. Okay, like for example, you have 1 minus 3x to the power of 9. Okay, and the question says find coefficient of x cube. So this is a possibility. Then you have a second possibility where x is not in the second term, where x is in the first term. Like for example, you might have 3x minus 5, the whole thing power 7, and the question says find the coefficient of x power 5. Okay, that's a possibility. And then, okay, I can't say anything about your school teacher. Maybe he might have taught it in a different way. ये हो सकता है. Khair, anyway. And then there's a third possibility, which is when x is in both terms. So this could look like x plus 1 upon 2x squared to the power of 6. And the question says, find the term in x power 4. I don't know if that's actually possible in this question, but you guys get the point, right? So let's start with the very first case, which is when x is in the second term. अब इसमें ना हमें pattern observe करना है. Okay, so we have to observe a pattern over here. So if let's say we go back to the expansion of 1 plus x power 5, and I write it over here, then I want you guys to observe a certain pattern. Okay, and see if you can identify what that pattern is. See if you can find a relationship between the value of r and the power that we have in x. See if you guys can do that. So this is the expansion of 1 plus x, the whole thing, power 5. So देखो r की value और x की power का क्या relation है? Yes, that is correct. R is equals to the power of x. Okay, so if r is 0, notice that there is no power of x. When r is 1, the power of x is 1. When r is 2, the power of x is 2. When r is 3, the power of x is 3. When r is 4, the power of x is 4. When r is 5, the power of x is also 5. So what does that mean? That means when x is, which spreadsheet are you talking about? When x is, I'm going to write this note, in the second term, the value of r is the required power of x. Simple. When x is in the second term, the value of r is the required power of x. For example, अब मैं आपको example दिखाता हूँ. Let me see if I can find a past paper question here. I hope I can. Okay, great. So here's an example. Notice that the question is saying that we have to find out the coefficient of x cube in the expansion of a certain binomial. Now here, if you expand the entire thing, that'll be a total waste of time. Okay, so don't waste your time trying to expand the entire thing. Notice that x is in the second term. Okay, the term which has x in it is in the second term. That means the value of r will be the required part of x. Now what do we want? We want the coefficient of x cube. That means r will be equal to 3. And in the formula, we're just going to replace r with 3. So 8c3, 1 raised to the power 8 minus 3, which is 5. 3x raised to the power of 3. Let's work this out. See what do we get? 8c3 into 3 raised to the power of 3. That's equal to 1512 x cube. And remember, we just want the coefficient of x cube. That means the answer will simply be 1512. Okay, so that's the answer to the first part. And this is what you do when x is in the second term. Okay, now part 2. Part 2 says find the coefficient of x cube in the expansion. What do you mean by second term? Here, this is the second term. First term, second term. That's what I mean by second term. अच्छा अब एक काम करते हैं. I think I'm going to run out of space for the second part. Let's take this to a fresh page. नहीं तो पूरा expand नहीं करना. पूरा expand आप करेंगे तो it's a waste of time. The question is not saying कि आप x cube तक expand करें. The question is just saying that find the coefficient of x cube. That's it. The end of story. Now here's part 2, and I want you guys to pay close attention to part 2, and I want you guys to make a note of this as well. Notice that we have 1 minus 4x, which is being multiplied by 1 plus 3x to the power of 8. Now, as far as 1 minus 4x is concerned, there's nothing to expand here. But as far as 1 plus 3x power 8 is concerned, notice that if I multiply 1 with 1512x cube, I will get the term which has x cube in it. But what about minus 4x? Don't you think that minus 4x can also be multiplied with a certain term, which will then give us x cube? Don't you think? X hai, what should I multiply x with so that it gives me x cube? The answer to that is x square. X multiplied by x square will give me x cube. Now you think there will be an x square in this expansion? Of course there will be. There will be an x square in this expansion. In fact, there will be x bar 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, all the way to 8. So that means I now need to find out the term in x square. I need to find out what is the term in x square. So if I want to find out the coefficient of x square from this expansion, if I want to find out the coefficient of x square from this expansion, that means r must be equal to 2. Okay, I will update that Excel sheet. I'll tell my team to do it. So 8c2, 1 raised to the power 8 minus 2, which is 6, and 3x raised to the power of 2. Now, why are we finding x squared? Notice that the question is not telling us. The question is not very nice in the sense कि वो हमें पहले से बता दे कि हमें क्या करना है. We have to figure it out ourselves. So this turns out to be 252 x squared. Now we know exactly all the terms that can potentially give us x cube. 252x squared. So 1 will be multiplied by 1512 x cube, and minus 4x will be multiplied by 252. So minus 4 into 252, that's minus 1008. And let's see what do we get. 1512 minus 1008, that's equal to 504 x cube, and the final answer will be 504. There we go. Okay, so I hope that makes sense. So by the way, you guys will find a worksheet which you can solve once we're done with the stream. In fact, you guys will not find one worksheet, you guys will find 3 worksheets which you guys can solve once we're done with the stream. Okay, so this is how when x is in the second term looks like. Now let's see what happens when x is in the first term. Now this is not very common. In fact, of the 3, this is the least common. But what's new in this is the fact that you don't have to expand the whole thing. Okay, you don't have to expand the whole thing. You can just figure out what the value of r is and find out the relevant coefficient. I mean, if you knew this already, well then I guess you're the smart one. But I guess some of us didn't know this, so that's why. So when x is in the first term, so like I said, this is not very common, so we're not going to have a past paper question here. And once again, let's try and identify a pattern. So I'm going to expand x minus 2 raised to the power of 5, okay? And I want you to find out a relationship between the value of r and the power of x, the power that we have on x. So when r equals to 0, that's going to be 5c0 x power 5 and minus 2 raised to the power of 0. Then when r equals to 1, it's going to be 5c1 x power 4 minus 2 power 1. Then r equals to 2, 5c3 x raised to the power of 5 minus, no wait, this is 2, 3 minus 2 power 2. R equals to 3, 5c3 x raised to the power of 2 minus 2 raised to the power of 3. Then r equals to 4, which means 5c4 x raised to the power of 5 minus 4, which is 1, minus 2 raised to the power of 4. Then r equals to 5, 5c5 x raised to the power of 0, minus 2 raised to the power of 5. Okay, apologies for the handwriting. Okay, so you guys know this already. मैंने पहले से करवाया है, हाँ करवाया है मैंने. You're right. There must be a stream on this. So this is x power 5. This is going to be minus 10 x power 4. This is going to be 40x cube. This is going to be minus 80x square. This is going to be, no wait, this is going to be minus 80x square. Yeah, this is going to be minus 80x. And then, sorry, positive 80x and then minus 32. Okay, so let's try and identify a pattern. So when r is 0, the power on x is 5. अच्छा आपने n को भी ज़रा ध्यान रखना है, ठीक है? Notice that n is equal to 5. Okay, when r is 1, the power on x is 4. Now what's 4 plus 1? 4 plus 1 is equals to 5. So 0 plus 5 equals to 5. 1 plus 4 is equals to 5. And ये क्या है? ये basically r है. In the first column we have r, and in the second column we have the power. And notice that they all add up. They both always add up and give me the value of n. So this is 2. 2 plus 3 equals to 5. 3. 3 plus 2 equals to 5. And that's how the pattern continues. 4 plus 1 equals to 5. 5 plus 0 equals to 5. So that means a standard formula could be made, and we can say that r plus the power on x is equal to n. Okay, so that means if I make r the subject, r is equals to n minus the power on x. So इसको हम थोड़ा सा fine tune करके लिख देते हैं, n minus the required power on x, which means another note coming. The note is that if x is in, अच्छा उसके लिए there are some exceptions. That's a good question that you've asked. There are some exceptions which we're also going to cover. If x is in the first term, the value of r equals n minus the required power on x. Okay, so let's say that you have the following. Let me find a nice example. Let's say you have 2x minus 1, the whole thing power 4, and you're asked to find the coefficient of x cube. Okay, so you're asked to find out the coefficient of x cube. Now, once again, you don't have to expand the whole thing. You could, but you're going to be wasting a lot of time. You may not have so much time in the exam. But what will be the coefficient of x cube? Let's see. Let's see what r will be equal to. So as we know, since x is in the first term, r will be equal to n minus the required power of x. Okay, so this is n. This is the required power of x, or power on x. So that means r is equals to 4 minus 3. That means r is equals to 1. So 4c1, 2x raised to the power 4 minus 1, which is 3, minus 1 raised to the power of 1. So 4c1 is 4, 2x cube is 8x cube, and minus 1 raised to the power of 1 is minus 1. So the answer is minus 32x cube. And the final answer, which is just the coefficient, that's going to be minus 32. Okay, so that's what you do when x is in the first term. Now, like I said, there are no past paper questions. There are rarely any past paper questions, so we're not going to waste time practice something that's not tested very often. Instead, I'd like to do the third and the final case, which is when x is in both terms, because this is also very common. I would say that this, along with the first one, is equally common. Break already? Abhi time hi kitna hua hai? How long has it been? It's only been 42 minutes. Nahi beta. So case number 3, which is when x is in both terms. Let's see what happens when x is in both terms. Yeah, I'll do independent. Yeah, we'll do that. Ye hum end mein karenge. Okay? There are some exceptions to the 3 rules, which I have made a note of. Uske liye hum kya karte hain? We simply use our common sense. Let me see if I have. Yeah, so I have a exception to the rules in my notes, and we'll do that also. So when x is in both terms. Now when x is in both terms, the way to find out the value of r is by using the formula. Okay, so the way that we find out the value of r is by using the formula NCR, a raised to the power n minus r, b raised to the power of r. So let's do a past paper question only and see how things work. And then we'll also do independent of x. So मुझे कोई past paper question मिल जाए ज़रा जल्दी से. Okay, found it. चलो इत्तेफाक से independent of x ही मिल गया. Now remember, independent of x basically means x power 0. Okay, if the question says find the term which is independent of x, that means x power 0. So that means the power on x that we want is 0. Okay, the power on x that we want is 0. Yes, this file will be uploaded inshallah once the stream ends. So how do we use the formula? Pay attention. So we have x square plus 2 upon x to the power of 9, and we want the coefficient of x power 0. Okay, we want the coefficient of x power 0. And what do we want? For that, we want the value of r. So we want the value of r that will give us the coefficient of x power 0. Yes, x power 0 basically means the constant. So the question could also say constant. Yeah, that's a nice thing that you pointed out. Question could also say find the constant in so-and-so expansion. Now, what if we expanded without knowing the value of r? This is what it will look like. 9cr, x raised to the power 2 minus r. Sorry, x square raised to the power 9 minus r. And 2 upon x raised to the power of r. Okay, this is what it would look like if we didn't know the value of r. Now what we're going to do is we're going to ignore everything that will not have an impact on the power of x. So 9cr में मैं r कुछ भी लगा दूं, x की पावर पे कोई फर्क नहीं पड़ेगा. 2 पे कोई भी पावर हो, x की पावर पे कोई फर्क नहीं पड़ेगा. Okay, reason why we're ignoring 9cr and 2 is because no matter what the value of r is, 2 and 9cr will not have any impact on the power. So we're only focused on x square raised to the power 9 minus r, and this I'm going to bring in the numerator using rule of indices. So x, the power on x becomes negative and the power r remains as it is. And remember, we want x power 0. What do we want? We want x power 0. So this becomes an indices question. So x raised to the power 2 times 9, that's 18, minus 2r into x raised to the power minus r equals to x power 0. So reason why we've equated it with x power 0, so that we can solve for the value of r that will give us x power 0. Using rules of indices, same bases are being multiplied, so powers will be added. Minus 2r minus r equals to 0. X power 0, we ignore the bases. So we have 18 minus 3r, which is equal to 0. That means 18 equals to 3r, which means r is equals to 6. ठीक है, यहाँ पे कहानी खत्म नहीं हुई. We have just found out the value of r, which will give us our desired term. Now we're going to go back and we're going to plug in 6 to see if it does indeed give us the term that's independent of x. So that means 9c6 x squared raised to the power 9 minus 6, which is equal to 3, and 2 upon x raised to the power of 6. So let's see what 9c6 is. 9c6, that's 84, into x power 6 into 2 power 6, which I believe is 64, but let's work it out anyway. Yeah, so it's 64 upon x power 6, and not coincidentally, but thankfully, rather, x power 6 and x power 6 cancel. That means our value of r is in fact correct, and 84 times 64 is equals to 5,376. Continued मैंने इसलिए लिखा है ताकि आपको पता चले कि ये मैंने यहाँ के बाद इधर कंटिन्यू किया, इसलिए लिखा है मैंने. Okay, you might think that this is a continuation in this order. That's not. It's in this order. Okay, makes sense? But can you explain how 2 and 9c are? Because x की power में change जब आएगा ना, when, for example, if let's say you have x square, but if you multiply it with any number that you like, it's going to remain x square only. Unless you multiply it by some other power of x. So for example, 9cr, मैं इसको किसी से भी multiply कर लूँ, the power on x will not change. This, however, is what will have an impact on the power of x. And similarly, this too will have no power on the impact of x. It's this x that will have an impact on the power of x. That's why we've ignored the rest of the terms. Okay? So let's do another question similar to this. Yeah, the stream is most likely going to last 2 hours, give or take. Okay, another independent of x question coming. No, what do you mean no? No. आप मना देखें, आप एंड में 2x पे देख लीजिएगा. मतलब जब हो जाए तो आप एंड में 2x पे देख लीजिएगा. So this was one example. Now we're doing the second example. Calculate the term independent of x in the binomial expansion of so and so. So independent of x means, once again, x power 0. So here we have x minus 1 upon 2x power 5 raised to the power of 18, and we want the term that's independent of x. So that means we want x power 0, and for that we want to find out what the value of r is. So we begin our journey without the value of r, 18cr, x raised to the power 18 minus r, 1 upon 2x power 5 to the power of r, and this we equate to x power 0. खुद ट्राई करें, अब तो देर हो गई, अब चलो मैंने कर लिया. I'll give you guys another question to solve. Okay, I have another question which I intended to solve myself originally, but I'll give it to you guys. So 18cr को इग्नोर करते हैं, 1 को इग्नोर करते हैं, 2 को इग्नोर करते हैं. ठीक है? We're just going to focus on x. So we have x raised to the power 18 minus r. We're going to shift this in the numerator using rules of indices. So multiplied by x power 5 minus 5, sorry, to the power of r equals to x power 0. So this becomes x to the power 18 minus r into x raised to the power minus 5r equals to x power 0. So x raised to the power 18 minus r minus 5r equals to x power 0. So that means 18 minus 6r equals to 0, which means r is equals to 3. Now, not the end of the story. We are now supposed to find out the term that we get with r. So 18c3, x raised to the power 18 minus 3, that's 15, and 1 upon 2x power 5 raised to the power of 3. Let's see what happens. 18c3 हमें क्या देगा? Let's see. 18c3 is 816 into x power 15 into 1 upon 8 x power 15. Why 8? Because we take the cube of 3, and why 15 on the power of x? Because the powers get multiplied. So all we have to do is, you think it's 815? No, it's 816. So here's what we do. 816 divided by 8, that's 102. अच्छा माइनस का ज़रा ख्याल रखना है. I just noticed कि मैंने माइनस साइन तो इग्नोर ही कर दिया. Yeah, there's supposed to be a minus sign. Yes. So minus 102 x power 15 over x power 15, and thankfully x power 15 cancel, and the final answer is in fact minus 102. And there you go. That's the answer. Okay, make sense? All right, good to hear that. Acha, I just realized that I don't really have a question for you guys, but you guys can solve them from the worksheet. ठीक है, आप लोग जब खुद practice करेंगे, you can do it from the worksheet. Yeah. That's one, that's two. Okay. Acha, अब let's have a look at the exception to the rule. Okay, let's have a look at an exception to the rule, and here it is. So in case there is an exception to the three rules, what do? What formula do we use? Anyone would like to answer that question? Exception to the three rules. What's the formula that we use? Anyone? The formula that we use in that case is common sense. That's correct. Use your common sense. Okay, what do I mean by that? Here's what I mean. Let's say that you have the following. Let's say you have 1 minus 2x squared, the whole thing power 6, and the question says find the coefficient of x power 6. Tell me, how will I find out the coefficient of x power 6? Now you guys will probably start blaming your teacher that my teacher didn't make us do this and blah blah, but your teacher doesn't really have to make you do this. You can kind of figure this out yourself. Here's how. If you know the basic concept of binomial. So we don't know the value of r, right? No problem. Let's start without r. So 6er, 1 raised to the power 6 minus r, and minus 2x squared raised to the power of r. Now tell me, what should you have on r so that in the end, the power on x is 6? What should you have on r so that in the end, the power on x is 6? Think about it. What should be the value of r so that when 2 and r get multiplied, you get 6? Obviously, the answer is 3. Obviously, the answer is 3. Okay? So the value of r that you're looking for is equal to 3. Why? Because 2r, so you can't irrelevant सवाल पूछ रहा है. 2r is equals to 6, which means r is equals to 3. Why 2r is equals to 6? Because these two get multiplied and you want power 6. That's why. So here's what we have. 6c3, 1 raised to the power 6 minus 3, which is 3, minus 2x squared is the power of 3. Let's see if this, in fact, gives us the coefficient of x power 6 or not. So 6c3 is going to be, let's work it out. 6c3, that's 20. 20 into minus 8 x to the power of 6. So 20 into minus 8, that's minus 160 x power 6. And the final answer is, in fact, minus 160. Okay? Now, I forgot to mention this at the start. Those of you who are watching and haven't liked the stream yet, please do so. And if you haven't subscribed, please do that as well. I really appreciate it. Sir, if you want to teach online, you have a... I do mind telling, actually, so I'm not going to answer your question. Yes, so this applies. Now we're going to learn how to figure out NCR without a calculator. अच्छा, repeat करने से बेहतर है कि आप वीडियो को थोड़ा rewind करके देख लें. Okay? So you can use your common sense here also. Now let's look at expansion of NCR without a calculator. So expansion of NCR without a calculator. So The formula is not going to be of much help over here. So I want you guys to pick up a pattern. Binomial in P1. I think binomial can come in P1, yes. It's, so you can please teach through the formula. I'm not a huge fan of the formula in scenarios like these. Okay, at some point, yes, you have to use the formula, but I don't prefer that you use the formula in scenarios like these. Okay, so let's start. So I want you guys to use your calculator. I know this is without a calculator, but I want you guys to use your calculator, and we're gonna make some standard rules for ourselves. So figure out 5C0. Okay, figure out 10C0. Figure out 12C0, and you will notice that you repeatedly get the same term, and that is 1. Okay, so that means we can make a standard rule for ourselves that no matter what the term is before C, as long as the term after C is 0, we get 1. Correct? We can make ourselves this standard rule. Now I want you guys to find out 5C1. I want you guys to find out 10C1. And I want you guys to find out 12C1. And tell me what you get. So you will get 5, 10, and 12. Which means, once again, we can have a standard rule for ourselves, which is that if you have NC1, the answer will be N. Okay, irrespective of what the value of N is. Then I want you guys to find out N5C5. I want you guys to find out 10C10. I want you guys to find out 12C12. You will notice that you get 1 here, you get 1 here, and you get 1 here, which means, once again, a standard rule that is NCN will be equal to 1. So these are some standard rules that we have. Okay, these are some standard rules that we have. अच्छा, मैं यहाँ पे mention कर देता हूँ that we are doing it without the formula. Okay, without the formula that's given in the book. The way that we use the formula and solve questions, I'll make a separate video on that. In fact, I do have to cover NCR and NPR without a calculator, so I'll make a separate video on that. Okay. Now, here is what I would like you guys to do. I am going to expand. I'm going to do some examples, and then I'd like you guys to pick up a pattern. So I'm sure I hope everyone's aware of factorial. Factorial is something that we did when we were doing permutations and combinations. So I want you guys to identify a pattern. So 7C2 will be, we'll do that in combination part 2 mein. Chalo theek hai, let me see if I can squeeze that in combination part 2. Yeah, thank you for reminding, because there's already a lot that we have to do in combination part 2, but I'll see if I can squeeze it in that. So 7C2 is 7 into 6 divided by 2 factorial, which means 7 into 6 upon 2 into 1. Okay, and then if we have, for example, 10C3, that's going to be 10 into 9 into 8 divided by 3 factorial. Okay, if let's say we have 15C4, that's going to be 15 into 14 into 13 into 12. Pick up a pattern, okay? Pick up a pattern. That's going to be 15 into 14 into 13 into 12 divided by 4 factorial. If let's say we have 5C3, that's going to be 5 into 4 into 3 divided by 3 factorial. Okay, I'm going to do one more example. If let's say we have 18C5, that's going to be 18 into 17 into 16 into 15 into 14 divided by 5 factorial. Now, who here has identified a pattern? You're welcome. Thank you for what though? I don't know, but yeah, you're welcome. N minus 1 upon R factorial. No, that's not a pattern. That's not the correct pattern. The correct pattern is something else. N minus 1, nope. ये तो आप लोग मुझे वो दे रहे हैं, ये तो आप लोग मुझे फॉर्मूला ही दे रहे हैं, ठीक है? आप बेवकूफ़ ना बनाएं, फॉर्मूला तो मुझे ही पता है. Number of factorial equals to the number of times you go back. Very good, very good. And what about the denominator? The denominator, I think, is quite straightforward, and that's R factorial. Okay, so if you look at the number of terms that we have in the numerator, Like I said, don't give me the formula, okay? I'm aware of what the formula is. I don't want the formula. I want the pattern. ठीक है? Formula आपको रट लें formula help नहीं करेगा. You need to be able to apply the formula, which is why you need to identify a pattern. So notice that R is 2 here. So in the numerator, we have 2 terms, okay? So we start from 7 and then we go back 1 term. And the reason why we stop after 2 terms because R is 2. And in the denominator, we have the factorial of 2. Then 10C3, that means in the numerator, we have 3 terms starting from 10. And in the denominator, we have 3 factorial. Then 15C4 means in the numerator, we have 4 terms starting from 15. And every preceding term is 1 less than 15. And in the denominator, we have 4 factorial. 18C5, we have 5 terms in the numerator starting from 18 and every preceding term is 1 less. And in the denominator, we have 5 factorial, okay? Now let's try and generalize this, okay? Let's try and generalize this. So that means if I don't know n, but if I know c, then what do? So NC0 we saw is equal to 1. So in this column, I'm writing down the expansion of NCR without a calculator, so pay close attention. This is expansion of NCR without calculator. So NC0 as we know is 1. NC1 as we know is n. Now what about NC2? So let's follow the pattern. In the numerator, we'll start with R, and then we will do n minus 2, and then we will divide by 2 factorial. Okay, so 2 into 1, or simply 2 factorial. And then we have NC3, which means n into n minus 1 into n minus 2 divided by 3 factorial. Okay, and then if you have NC4, so in the numerator, you'll have 4 terms starting with n, and every preceding term will be 1 less than n. And then in the denominator, you will have 4 factorial, which is 4 into 3 into 2 into 1. So yeah, it's going to be n minus 1. Sorry, my bad. Thank you for pointing that out, pro gamer. And then finally, when you're done expanding, NCN is going to be equal to 1. Okay, when you're done expanding, NCN is going to be 1. Yeah, I've made that correction. Like I said, thank you for pointing that out. Now let's do an example question. Okay, now that we know how to expand without a calculator, let's do an example question. Now this is also a concept which is part of the syllabus. A lot of people don't do it, but it's not tested very frequently. That's correct, but it's still part of the syllabus. So it says, given that when 1 upon x upon 3 to the power n is expanded in ascending powers of x, the coefficient of x power 2 is 4. So what's the value of r that will give us the coefficient of x, square? So in maths and add maths, O-level, new syllabus and paper pattern, what specified formulas have we given in the paper? But I've already made a video on it in which I've explained in detail the formula sheet that you will be given. You can check it out, or you can just open up a specimen paper, okay, and see the formulas yourself. No, r will not be equal to 1. The appropriate value of r, which will give you the desired coefficient, is 2. Why? Because x is in the second term. So r must be equal to 2. So let's expand with r as 2. So NC2, 1 raised to the power n minus 2 minus x upon 3 raised to the power of 2. Okay, now as far as 1 raised to the power n minus 2 is concerned, we can ignore it because no matter what 1 is raised to the power 2, it won't make a difference. But as far as NC2 is concerned, so that's going to be n into n minus 1 divided by 2 factorial into x square upon 9. Okay, so what do we have? We have n into n minus 1 upon 18 x squared. Now notice that the question says that the coefficient of x squared is 4. So coefficient means this. This is the coefficient. Okay, this is the coefficient of x squared, which is equal to 4. So that means n into n minus 1 upon 18 equals to 4. Let's cross multiply and expand at the same time. N squared minus n equals to 18 times 4, which is 72. n square minus n minus 72 equals to 0. We can solve using middle term breaking. It's going to be minus 9n. 2 factorial, अच्छा मजे की बात 2 factorial हो या 2 हो, it won't make a difference. Okay, as far as 2 is concerned. But yeah, you're right. It will be 2 factorial. Okay, I think my camera is dead again. Just a minute. Let me see what I can do to fix it. Just a minute. You guys can complete this in the meantime. I think this has a auto off feature which I need to disable or something. Okay, so we're back live. Yeah, so if it was x power 3, how would we have done it? Then you would have taken the power of r, the value of r is 3. So minus 9n plus 8n minus 72 equals to 0, which means n into n minus 9 plus 8 into n minus 9 equals to 0. I'm going to skip a few steps. The value of n will be either equal to 9 or minus 8. Now the question says positive value and it can only be positive. So the answer will be n equals to 9. Okay? बेटा देखो मैंने यहाँ पे पूरा एक पैटर्न बना के दिया ना आप लोगों को. That if it's NC2, the numerator will have 2 terms, denominator will have 2 factorial. If it's NC3, numerator will have 3 terms, denominator will have the factorial of 3. So I meant if it was x cube was in the equation. You mean in place of x, if it was x cube? Because the question says n is positive. The question says n is positive. Achha, so conceptually we're done, but let me do a few miscellaneous questions. That's not possible. That's not possible. वरना फिर हम solve नहीं कर सकते. Okay, here is another question which we can solve. Prove 0 factorial equals to 1. How do you arrange 0 objects in a straight line? How many ways can you arrange 0 objects in a straight line? Or let's say 5 people are asked to arrange 0 objects in a straight line. What will be the difference in the way that they arrange it? 5 people are asked to arrange 0 objects in a straight line. What will be the difference in the way that they will arrange it? Okay, so you guys want to try this? Please go ahead. Try this. Let me know what your answer is. It's theoretical. If it's theoretical, no difference, right? If there's no difference, that means there's only one way, which is why the answer is 1. Iski proof hai, okay, I'm going to be honest with you. There is a proof for this, but which I don't remember really. I know there is a way to prove it, but I don't remember it. Okay, so solve this please, and after this, I guess we are done, which is pretty cool. Permutation combination, inshallah, I said on Friday. Tomorrow, inshallah. Kal, I will be covering the remaining concepts of permutations. And yeah, then we're done. Achha, please do the 3 worksheets that I've given you guys. You can now solve them as practice. मैं देख रहा हूँ इतने कोई और difficult question मिल जाए. So why are you wearing watch in the right hand? This is not my right hand, this is my left hand. I write with my left hand. That's the hand in which the watch is in. After this, I'm going to do one more question. I found a really nice question which I'd like us to solve, and then we're done. There is hard questions in IGCSE. Okay, as far as AdMaths is concerned, let me tell you, there is no difference between AdMath IGCSE and between Math O-level. Okay, as far as AdMaths is concerned, there is no difference. So keep that in mind. Okay, so do we have the answer? N is equals to 6. Good job. N is 6. That's correct. So here's how this works. Once again, we want the coefficient of x square. And in that case, r will be equal to 2. So NC2, 1 into 1 raised to the power n minus 2, x upon 5 raised to the power of 2. So NC2 will be n into n minus 1 divided by 2 factorial into x upon 5, the whole thing square, which I think we can expand immediately. So that's going to be x squared upon 25. So it's going to be n into n minus 1 upon 25 times 2. That's 50 x squared. And this is the coefficient of x squared, which is equal to 3 upon 5. Cross multiply, solve, you'll get your answer. Now, I don't remember exactly किस year, but इसका recent years में काफ़ी मुश्किल सवाल आया था. I think I have taken that question in the worksheet. So make sure that you guys, basically what I'm trying to say is, make sure that you guys solve the worksheet. Trigonometry I have covered in detail for AS Math. You guys can watch that. उससे आपकी भी trigonometry अच्छी खासी हो जाएगी. Yeah, 4 mark is actually quite generous, no doubt. Anyway, so here's the last question, which I'd like us to solve, and then we are done. It's a different concept. No, not a different concept, sorry. A different concept to compare to what this question is. N square plus n minus, I'm not sure if that's the equation that you get. In fact, that's not going to be the equation that you get. 2 hours have passed, really? No, they haven't. 2 hours haven't passed. It's only been slightly more than 1 hour. Okay, so this is the last question. After this, we're going to end the stream. And I'm going to solve it. I want you guys to just pay attention. So find the first 3 terms in the expansion of 2 plus u to the power of 5. Okay, first 3 terms, that means 5c0, 2 raised to the power of 5, u raised to the power of 0. 5c1, 2 raised to the power of 4, u raised to the power of 1. 5c2, 2 raised to the power of 3, u raised to the power of 2. So this is going to be 32. This is going to be 80u. And this will be 10 into 8, also 80u square. So the answer, let's write it nicely, 32 plus 80u plus 80u square. That's the answer. Yeah, APGP part 2 bhi due hai. Yeah, I think after permutations and combinations, let's do APGP part 2. Okay, so by replacing u with 2x, I announce on my Instagram. Okay, I announce on my Instagram when I'm streaming next. So, well, you can follow if you want, or you can check occasionally if you don't want to follow. So by replacing u with 2x minus 5x squared, find the coefficient of x squared. So we're going to replace u. Achha, interesting thing is that the question could have also not given you this. Okay, so the question is generous here, but the question could also be not generous and not give you this. So don't think that the question will always be so helpful. So if the question says, find the expansion of so-and-so, it's your job to recognize that u is basically equal to 2x minus 5x squared. It's your job to recognize that. So here the question has been kind enough to make that exception for us, but if the question doesn't, then that's fine. So 80 into 2x minus 5x squared, the whole thing squared. Now from this, we want the coefficient of x squared. So what we're okay, I appreciate that. So we're going to ignore 32 and we're going to multiply all the terms that give us the coefficient of x squared. Okay, so as always, keep your eyes on the price. The price is x squared. So 80 को हम multiply करेंगे by minus 5x squared. So that's going to be minus 400 x squared. Now before I multiply 80 with any of the terms here, I will have to expand. But I'm only going to expand for the first term. Okay, if you want, you can expand the entire thing. So it's going to be a square minus 2ab. So that means 5 into 2, 10. 10 into 2 is 20. So 20x cube. या चलो मैं एक काम करता हूँ. I'm pretty sure एक सवाल आएगा कि ये middle term कैसे आई. I'll just show the working. 2x square minus 2 into 2x into 5x square plus 5x square times 2. So this is the expansion. How did you understand 2x minus 5x square is u? Compare the two. Compare this and compare this. And tell me, what do you see? We see a 2 here and we see a 2 here. In place of u, we see two terms and they are 2x minus 5x square. That's how you figure it out. So the expansion is minus 400x square को ऐसे carry forward कर देते हैं. This will be 80 into 4x square and all the other terms become irrelevant. Okay, all the other terms become irrelevant. Why do they become irrelevant? Because they're not going to multiply and give you x square. They're going to multiply and give you something else. So that's why we just ignore every other term. Okay, so these terms I should mention over here are irrelevant. So 80 into 4x squared, that's plus 320x squared. So if you simplify, you get minus 80 x squared, which means minus 80 is the final answer. Okay, so you can have questions like these. Ultimately, it just boils down to you knowing how to expand. If you know how to expand, then you can solve pretty much any question there is. Okay, so anyway, I'll stop here. I'll see you guys inshallah tomorrow. Tomorrow I'm doing combinations part 2. Make sure to tune in. And yeah, so take care, fellas. Allah Hafiz. Is constant velocity vectors is still part of the syllabus. Yes. How much does AdMath help? It helps you a lot in the first year. AS becomes a piece of cake. It was easy. Telling you're welcome. Sir did a stream on the difficult password question on AdMath on Twitch, but it's not available to you anymore. Could you please? Yeah, I'll do something like that. I did that very close to exams. So close to exams, I'll do it again. Most likely not on Twitch, but I'll do it on YouTube. I don't understand the irrelevant part. The reason why it's irrelevant is because if you expand this, you'll get x cube. And if you expand this, you'll get x power 4. Now, 80 को x cube से multiply करने का कोई फ़ायदा नहीं है और 80 को 25x power 4 से भी multiply करने का कोई फ़ायदा नहीं है because remember, keep your eyes on the price. The price is x squared. We just want the terms that will give us x squared. So we're only going to expand till the terms that will multiply and give us x squared. That's it. Integration, yes. Don't worry, towards the end of the exams, towards the end, close to CIs, I'll be streaming pretty much all the topics. Okay? So once again, take care, fellas. Bye. Allah Hafiz.